Crochet Crochic, and today we are going to focus on the universally accepted symbols for our crochet stitches. We are going to look at the convenience of the charts and also the individual symbols, on why it is important to know these symbols and how to understand your crochet patterns that's written in a chart form. We will understand why it opens up a world of opportunity just because you know these different symbols, that you're not limited only to written patterns or YouTube patterns. These are the universally accepted symbols for our different crochet stitches. The Craft Yarn Council have standardized the symbols in order to make our crochet patterns easier to read. These symbols cross language barriers so that a pattern that's written in a different language can still be followed as long as it's written in a chart form. Now you have 3 different ways a pattern can be followed. The one is a YouTube video, the second is a written out pattern, and the third is a chart pattern. So if you don't know how to follow a chart, you limit yourself to the amount of patterns that's available to you. Then, when you look at the different stitches, this is the universally accepted stitch symbol for a double crochet in US terms and a treble crochet in UK terms. So even if you don't understand whether your pattern is written in US term or a UK term, as long as you can see that symbol, you know what stitch you need to make in your pattern. When I find a pattern that's written in a traditional form, I always rewrite my patterns because you get lost when you see all these sentences while you work. Some of these patterns are so long and repetitive that once you convert it into a chart form for yourself, it's far easier to see not only which stitch to make, but you can also see exactly where to place that stitch. So it makes it much easier to follow these charts. And it's more visual to understand how many stitches you need to place. The second thing that we are going to look at is how to understand these different symbols and how to memorize it. These crochet symbols are really quite easy to understand and to memorize. When you see a little dot in your pattern, that is for your slip stitch. Your slip stitch, you want that to kind of disappear into your work, and that's why it makes sense that this is just a little dot on your pattern. The chain stitch looks like a little oval, and it makes sense that it's like an oval because your chain stitch does look like an oval. Your single crochet is either a multiplication or a plus sign. It depends on the pattern, and it will show it on the pattern. At the start of the pattern, it will give you an abbreviation of all the stitches that's used in your pattern, and so it will show you whether it's a multiplication or a plus sign when they refer to your single crochet. Now when you look at your half double crochet, it's written in a capital T. It's got this top with the line down. That's for your half double crochet. Your double crochet has got that same capital T, but it's got a diagonal line going through it. Now it's easy to remember those because when you look at your double crochet, that line going through means that you yarn over once before you place your hook into the next stitch. Your treble crochet has got 2 lines over, which means that you yarn over twice over your hook before you place your hook into the next stitch. So these 2 are really quite easy to understand. The only exception is with your half double crochet. Your half double crochet does not have a line through, but you yarn over before you place your hook into that stitch. If you look at the double treble crochet in US terms, or in UK terms, the triple treble crochet, it's got 3 lines over that large T. So again, it shows 3 times you yarn over your hook before you place it into the next stitch. It's just easier ways to remember exactly what this symbol, what this pattern wants you to do. As long as you know what that symbol means, you can easily follow a pattern without even knowing the name of the stitch. These are your individually completed stitches. When you look at it and you see it's a completed double crochet like your normal symbol with no tops are connected and no bases are connected. That is when you make 1 double crochet into next stitch. For example, if there are chain stitches below each of those, it would be easy to see that there is a double crochet into each of the chain stitches that you see. Now when you look at this one, you see 3 individual double crochets, but they all go into one stitch. Each of them are separated. They are not connected to one another, so these are not clusters. There's your double crochet going into a chain stitch. Then you have your next one going into a chain stitch, and your next double crochet going into a chain stitch. These are partially completed stitches. You can see the tops are connected. So there's a half double crochet and another half double crochet, but they're sharing the same top, which means these are half double crochets, 2 together, which are my decreasing stitches. So this leg of my double crochet would go, for example, into that chain space, and this leg would go into that chain space. Also, you can find it in a double crochet. So here you can see it's 3 double crochets together, because I see they can share it. They are sharing a top at the top, and they are double crochets because they've got the one line through the T. So say, for example, these 3 double crochets together, each leg goes into a single crochet at the row below. So you can see clearly where you place each of those stitches. There are my 3 double crochets together, and so each leg or partially completed double crochet goes into a different single crochet, and then when you yarn over and you pull through all 3 of them together. You also find that the connected tops come when you have clusters. For example, here is a puff stitch where you see 3 partially completed puff stitches with one top. They are yarn over and pull through all the loops on your hook, it would say, or a popcorn stitch. This is the symbol for a popcorn stitch. You can see it's 5 individual double crochets that go into the one space because they are connected at the bottom, and they are joined together at the top. Their tops are being shared. So that's when you pull out your hook and you place it into the first one and put it into the last one. So the popcorn stitch and the puff stitch have connected tops because they are finished off together. But you can see they are placed into one stitch. These are connected at the bottom. So unlike your decrease stitches where they are on separate spaces at the bottom, you can see that one ends in a separate stitch to this one. Here they are all joined together into the same stitch, so it will look like this. For example, those puffs go into that stitch together, or in this case, that popcorn goes into that single crochet stitch. So in this case, you would skip 3 single crochets and you would place your popcorn stitch into that 4th single crochet from the side. The crochet symbols not only shows you which stitch to use, but it shows you exactly where to place a stitch. So it makes it much easier than a written pattern. For example, this one, it shows you directly into that middle chain that you see. You have 3 chains and you need to place that one into the middle chain. Over here, you can see 3 double crochets, and all 3 of them go into that same chain stitch, because you can see they are connected at the bottom. So you know the designer wanted those 3 stitches to be placed into that chain stitch specifically. Over here you can see that you have 5 double crochets, but they are into the chain space. You can see these stitches are not connected at the bottom, so it's not into a specific chain, but more into a chain space or into a chain area. It's unlike that one where it's specifically into that chain stitch, where you can see they are connected at the bottom, or this one is specifically into that chain stitch. These ones are hovering and they're not connected over this chain space. These are the symbols for my post stitches. That's my double crochet back post, and that's my double crochet front post. Now I can see that it's a post stitch because it's got these hooks, and I know it's a double crochet because it's got one line over my T. But quite frankly, I always forget which one is a back post and which one is a front post. So that's why the abbreviations that you see on the patterns are so important, because it will show you the symbol and it will say this is the back post and that is the front post double crochet. I can have these symbols in any stitch. There's my half double crochet in a back post and my front post half double crochet. I can see it's a half double crochet, because it doesn't have that line through like my double crochets, but I know it's got the hook, which means that it's a post stitch. When you have these arches below your stitches, there's my normal double crochet with an arch underneath it, and there's my double crochet with another arch underneath it. When it's like this, it is a back loop. So this is a double crochet that goes into the back loop of the stitch below. This arch means that it's a front loop double crochet. So I'm going to place my double crochet into the front loop of the next stitch. Now it's quite easy to see, because if you look at these arches, when you look at the top of your stitches, you see a back loop and a front loop. So these symbols are really quite self-explanatory, because the one that's at the back looks like a back loop. That's my back loop one. And the one that's at the front looks like the one at my front, so that's the front loop. These stitches can also be written in any stitch. There's my half double crochet back loop and my half double crochet front loop. I can do the same with a single crochet back loop, and single crochet front loop. So when I see these hooks underneath my stitch symbols, it means that stitch needs to go into the front loop or the back loop of the next stitch. Another great benefit of a diagram or chart form pattern is to see when there are mistakes that you might find in a written pattern. It's very difficult to spot those mistakes in a written pattern, whereas if you work in a chart, you can exactly see where the stitch needs to go and how many stitches there need to be. You can make a typo mistake in a written pattern that would mess up your whole pattern, where in a chart, it's not so easy to make those same mistakes. When you are working in rows with your diagram, you will read from the bottom to the top. So you will start at the bottom and you will work your way to the top. And the reason for that being is you cannot make a stitch if there's nothing below it. So in order to make any stitch, there needs to be something below it. So you won't read your pattern from the top to the bottom. So you know you have to start with chain foundation. There are your 4 chain stitches, and then you have to chain 3 stitches for your turning chain, and then you start making your double crochets into those chain stitches at the bottom. So if it's not the arrows showing you the direction of your work, it will be these chain stitches that you can draw a conclusion from. Now when you work in rows, you will work in zigzag from left to right, going all the way up to your pattern. When you start here, you start with your 4 chains and you make 3 chains for your turning chain. Then you make a double crochet into your next chain, a double crochet into your next chain, double crochet into your next chain, double crochet into your last chain. And then you make 3 chains extra for your turning chain. And then you place another double crochet into the top of that double crochet into the top of that double crochet into the top of that one, and so you go on. So you go left and right, turning your work around after every row. These tops of your symbols show where the stitches will be, but the bases show you where you will place your stitch. So for example, this half double crochet needs to be placed into that half double crochet because it's right on top of it. But this one is maybe like a cable stitch where it droops down and it goes to the stitch 2 rows below. So if it goes to the base and it has a hook around it, it would make it a post stitch. If it droops and it goes just into the top of the stitch, it means that it will be placed in the top of that stitch instead of around the post. This one will be going around the post. That one goes into the top of the stitch. Also, when you're working with a cable pattern and you go from left to right, you don't need to mentally turn around those stitches when you are working. The designer has already placed those stitches on the chart as it should be. So if you see a front post on your pattern, you need to make a front post. Don't mentally turn the stitch around in your head. When you have turned your work around, the designer has already incorporated that into the pattern. When you work in the round, you will see the same symbols. These symbols will not only show you what stitch to make, but where to place your stitch. So You start in the center and then you see your 4 chain stitches there. There's a chain, 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 and these little dots, those are your slip knots. So you will join your 4 chain stitches with a slip knot. Now you can see from this pattern there are your 3 chains, which would count as a double crochet in order to get your work to the next height. And then 3 chains would be your corner. So when we look at this pattern, it will read chain 4 and slip knot into the first chain. Then chain 6 stitches, of which the first 3 would count as a double crochet, and then the next 3 would be my corner. And then I place 3 double crochets into that same center. Then you're going to do another 3 chain stitches and another 3 double crochets, 3 chain stitches, 3 double crochets, 3 chain stitches, and then 2 double crochets all into that center chain space. Now for your centers, sometimes you get it that it's 4 chain stitches, and sometimes you'll see the center with a symbol like this. That is your magic loop. So if it doesn't have the 4 chains, you will see the magic loop. When you work in the rounds, it sometimes gives you the round numbers. So round 1, 2, 3. But if it doesn't give that, you can see where the round starts based on the slip knot. Because normally when you get to the end of the round, you make a slip knot into the first stitch of that round. If you found my video useful, please remember to hit the like and subscribe button. And also if you press the bell, you will be notified of any further videos that I make.